Hey guys, today I just wanted to take a look at a sample essay that was submitted a couple of semesters ago. I've mentioned it in class, but I wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of go through it piece by piece so that there might be, if you have any kind of questions about how to write your problem-solving proposal essay, how you could kind of follow this example and do a really, really good job. As I mentioned in class, it earned a 150 out of 150, so obviously you can't really get much better than that. At least not for this assignment. It's in the research essay writing notes, or research writing notes, if I can read my own elaborate titles for this. And it's kind of towards the bottom. Let me scroll down to it real fast. It's right past the conclusion, right? Sample research essay from fall 2014. Student K research essay. I'm not going to tell you who student K is, but she was a really good student from a couple of semesters ago. And if you just click on it, pops open as a PDF, right? It's a really great example. It is ever so slightly out of date now. There are a couple things about it, like the title is different. I don't call it research essay anymore. I did not, at this point, specifically require the proposal, as I mentioned before. And then also, unfortunately, and this is something that's popped up in previous assignments as well, some of the examples that we've had, the MLA is out of date, right? This is using MLA 7, and we're obviously using MLA 8. So it's a little bit off that way, but everything else is really rock solid. The formatting is great besides the citation format. So if you kind of want to double check some of the stuff, like even just looking at things like the title formatting and the way that the citations in here are formatted, that's all good. It's mostly the works cited that's just a little bit out of date. And the fact that a couple of elements don't really hit the proposal idea as hard as maybe we do, but it's still a really good problem-solving proposal essay. Instead of kind of going through it like this, which I could do, but I actually have prepared a series of notes that kind of go through the essay a little bit better. Just kind of looking at the major building blocks, the thesis statement, the argument, how the research is used, the counter-argument, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to pull this thing up, make this thing happen the right way. Switch that. That's not the way I want it to look. Here we go. That's better. As I said, this is something that I would do in class if we had a little bit more time, but we didn't have time to do it. And so this is a slideshow that I've used in the past, a little lesson that I've used in the past. And so it's kind of posed as like a little activity where people can find the stuff, and then they would we would just talk over it. So that's why everything's phrased in like questions. You'll see that on future slides too. But so in talking about that, this is the introduction paragraph for her essay. If you kind of haven't, maybe you're following along or something like that. This is the first essay paragraph. And we know, where's the thesis statement in this essay? It's where it should be. It's the last sentence in the paragraph. I won't read through the whole introduction or anything like that, but just, obviously it's that last sentence. And again, the proposal idea isn't very clear, but it still has a really, really clear argument. It says the jaw-dropping possibilities, overall availability, and easiness of the photo editing program, Photoshop, continues to wrongly impact people in their body images today. It takes a clear side. You have no misunderstanding about what position she's coming down on. And also, if we just kind of think about it in terms of our formula, it's got all the pieces, right? It's got the claim, and then it's got 3 reasons for supporting it. You can always have more or less reasons than 3, but you should have those clearly defined reasons the way that she does. Again, she has a very clear proposal. If she were writing the paper today, I would say, well, you got to make sure you mention that proposal idea in there, but that's small potatoes. The rest of it's really, really good, and this is really, really good, of course, too. This was exactly what I was looking for 3 years ago when I'm recording this now. The other thing she does really well is she uses information pretty much perfectly. She does this thing that we talked about briefly in class called synthesis, where you reorganize things by ideas, not by sources. Sometimes people want to just talk about everything that happened in a source in a paragraph, move on to a new paragraph, and talk about everything that happened in that source. And that's not really what we want to do, because that gets really disjointed and jumpy and repetitive and in kind of awkward ways. And so what we want to do is kind of reorganize things so that they're based around ideas. And then each paragraph should make it really, really clear what the idea is based off of the topic sentence. And that's what she does, right? I've highlighted that so that it's in nice, beautiful purple. And that's just talking about the idea that Photoshop is really easy. And you might remember that that was an idea in her thesis statement as well. And then how do we know that she's doing the good synthesis? Because we got multiple sources, and then, I won't read through the entire thing. You can see it's in paragraph 3, which is on page 2. But in the Long source and the Fitzgerald source, they both just talk about different elements of how Photoshop is easy. It's really easy to use. You don't have to know how to use every aspect. That's what Long says. And then the Fitzgerald source just talks about how ridiculously simple it is to do something, unfathomable, change people's heads using Photoshop. And so it just makes these really good points. But it also doesn't overwhelm the paragraph, too. You can see she's got a lot of good introduction, a lot of good analysis between and after the quotes. She does a really good job, but she's also doing that great job with the synthesis. Again, it's a question. You probably know where I'm going with this. Is there a quote burger in paragraph 5 on page 3? You better believe there is, right? Here we go. It's all broken down into its pieces. We got the top bun, the cheese for one, and then a piece of meat, in this case a quotation, and then a citation, then another source with another piece of meat. It's a kind of more like the double cheeseburger as opposed to the Big Mac. But that's okay. We can play around with different types of sandwiches in this strange metaphor that I keep coming back to. The most important thing to notice is that, she's got it. She's got two really good points that she's making in here about, again, what Photoshop can do. But it doesn't overwhelm the paragraph. Her analysis, her explanation of what's going on, her kind of context building that she does beforehand with the introduction, that's more than those two little lines of the quotes. And that's kind of what you want to do too. You want to strive for that kind of balance. The last slide that I'll show you real quick is just more about the argumentation aspect. Again, she does not specifically have to have a proposal in this version of the paper, but she just happens to. So she's been explaining how the paper goes into all these problems that Photoshop has. And so what's the solution? Okay. In order to stop these negativities from continuing to impact people as badly, the simple measure of having a rating scale, as earlier mentioned, should be enforced, right? And I'm just kind of grabbing the ideas from her topic sentences from some of those spots in her paper. You can obviously read through and see how she explains all that, but it's a really good, sensible argument. She just comes up with the basic idea of how this rating scale would work and why that makes a lot of sense. And again, it wouldn't be really hard to do. At the same time, she acknowledges that there are some people that don't necessarily want it, right? She's got a good counter argument. When it comes down to editing photographs in general, it's completely understandable that some edits are required to complete an appealing photo. And she mentions the ideas of kind of like removing things, not necessarily manipulating things, like making people look thinner than they actually are, younger than they actually are, but just things like removing blemishes or wrinkles or unsightly marks, or even things like removing cars or whatever that might be in the back of a shot that might make the shot look a little less, picturesque or whatever. And is that so bad? And so she kind of acknowledges that, that's not really as bad, but she makes this really good point that even those things, they're not significant problems. And really, if the photographer can't necessarily get those shots the way they want them without Photoshop, then what does that really say about the photographer? And, what does that say about life, that we're trying to remove all these things and kind of still create that unrealistic expectation? So she makes a lot of really good points that way. It's an excellent essay. I would encourage you to read it very closely, because you can get a lot out of the style of writing it, as much as these things that I've pointed out here. As always, if you email me at mnorman@binu.edu, I'm glad to answer any questions about these types of things. And one other thing I'll just mention real quick before I run out of my time here. You only get about 10 minutes, so I gotta hurry. But one of the things that Student K did after she got her rough draft done is she brought it to me, right? She had a couple of days, and you guys will have about the same amount of time as she did after her rough draft workshop. She brought it to me. She had a couple of questions, and we kind of workshopped them just briefly. It was only like 15 or 20 minutes. And then she turned in this thing that was, 150 out of 150. I would really encourage you guys to do the same. If you come talk to me, I can tell you exactly what I'm looking for. But that's enough of that. That's all for me for right now. Again, email mnorman@binu.edu with any questions. I'm glad to help you out, always.